I couldn't see really beyond 12 or 18 months, even at the early stages of my career. But when my daughter was born, suddenly paying for college became a real thing. Not from a stressful standpoint, but having a target that is that far out was really, really useful. It was also it was part of that thought process or the change in my mindset that made me start thinking about building businesses, or building a business at the time, thinking about what I wanted to do with the next 20 years. It was very much part and parcel of that process. What am I going to do so that when my daughter goes to college, that we're not worrying about a $50,000 tuition bill or whatever. I don't remember what the numbers were at that time, but by the way, that's the scope we're talking about now. And $50,000 in after-tax income to pay for tuition is a pretty tall order, especially at the time when I was in my early to mid 30s and didn't have a piece of business or a business that I'd already started that would clearly get me to that point. So that was really sort of the mindset change of, I have 20 years to build something. What do I want it to be? Well, what industry do I want it to be? Like that, it was a set of active thought processes, like within a week of her being born. I'm not kidding. It was that concrete for me. And I'm not exactly with the same place that I would want to be because of a variety of things. A great financial crisis was a bit of a financial setback. I co-founded or founded a handful of companies, and the outcomes of those, I've had several small exits, but the outcomes of the exits, people don't talk about this too often, but if you sell a private company to another private company, the success of the acquiring company really impacts, your future, and it's suddenly no longer just a thing that you can control. And so those outcomes were not, they weren't as, let's say, success is the wrong word. They were successful as far as I was concerned, but they didn't end up where I wanted to be. I'm not going to start a new company. In fact, I'm starting a new one right now. I'm not in a position today where I can just stop working if I don't want to. We have resources which make it possible for me and my co-founders to start this new company, for example. But getting back to the mindset thing, it really sort of extended my time horizon. And then once I found Bitcoin, and got past that sort of gambling phase that everybody was sort of thinking about in the mid-teens, 2017, 18, 19, in that era, maybe 16, 17, 18. Once I got past that, the long time horizon that I'd already sort of become accustomed to was, mapped well onto where we are with Bitcoin today.
The first thing that every Bitcoiner does, and the most important activity that every Bitcoiner keeps on doing, is buying Bitcoin. And I personally use Relay to buy and sometimes also spend or sell my Bitcoin. And there are two main reasons why I do so. The first one is it's Bitcoin only. They do not do any shit coins. They do not do any cryptos, any stocks, or anything else. This is a tool, an app that is fully focused only and solely on Bitcoin. The second one is self-custody. They give you the keys to your Bitcoin the moment you buy them. You never give them the control over your Bitcoin, and you don't have to trust them because you can verify that you and only you have the keys to your Bitcoin. There's no third-party risk. There's no freezing of your assets. There's no rug pulling. There's nothing of that. Download Relay, the app, on your phone, or go to relay.app on your browser and use code Robin to save fees and get cheaper Bitcoin. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called micro-seed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With micro-seed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a one inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because MicroSeed is not selling the washer. MicroSeed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. It's super interesting for me to say. I personally don't have kids, but I'm too young. Like maybe I should have soon. But like I see this, and I asked this question actually quite some time on the podcast, but especially I asked it also like off the podcast, off the recording a lot. What has changed when you got a kid? And this is actually something that comes out a lot. I realized, and I hear that sentence a lot, I realized that I have to provide for that kid. It's no longer just about myself. And yes, to a certain extent with the wife, it already comes a little bit. But your wife is still a human being that might be self-sufficient to a certain degree, at least. This kid cannot work. This will come in this existence and is fully dependent on you. He cannot eat, he cannot work, he cannot walk, he cannot do anything. So you have to take care of it. And there's something where all of a sudden your horizon goes above yourself, and this is something I've not experienced again myself, so I don't want to talk like as an expert on that topic, as just not experienced myself. Just from the experience from all the other ones that I've seen, it seems to like make something bigger out of your life than just yourself, and you have another human being. Maybe you got lucky with twins, then it's like two others, like and so on. Maybe you get after a year another one, and like it just gets more and more. I interviewed I forgot his name. I interviewed a guy that has 12 kids on this show, not Elon Musk. And it's
I cannot imagine it.
It's crazy. I met him in Vegas actually last year, and it was so fun because we ran into each other on the airport with all the kids. It is crazy. Like he had two, the wife had one, and then there were like all the other ones in the middle. I'm like, wait, like that's a football team right there.
Totally. You could have a whole side of football or rugby probably. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I'm I think most people are self-interested first and foremost, maybe not actually selfish in that sort of negative way that we often think about. But when I got married, I've been married twice. I was married briefly in my late 20s. And we split up fairly swiftly. And then I've been with my wife now we got together in 1999, so more than 25 years now. 20, good heavens, it'll be. Anyway, sorry, we'll gather. But the point is that once you make that commitment to somebody, the truly long-term one, thinking about whether it's providing for them or just being accommodating their needs and particularly the time needs, and I'm getting to that with fatherhood in particular. The time needs are important, right? You're not just doing whatever you want all the time. You are accommodating somebody who is literally family, right? Accommodating a family member is a meaningful thing. To what you sort of alluded to about being a young father, I was not particularly young. But I was in my mid 30s. And so, I wasn't like running around hanging out all the time, but I had an active business life in the 5 or 8 years running up to that. And the time dynamic is the biggest single change. The financial commitment is serious, but the minute you get home from the hospital, you have, in the US anyway, you have some hospital bills, but the dramatic impact it's not that big a deal. Like, I'm sure that there are less financially fortunate people for whom diapers and all the rest of it is a huge burden, and I don't mean to minimize that, but for the bulk of people, it's a manageable extra cost. Over time, though, the time commitment is what really, really changes. And what I found, first of all, I should say, um, my wife was committed to being a stay-at-home mom, and we were able to do that. And so, and part of that, the actual conversation that we had was, you bring home the bacon, I will take care of the house, and you don't, all you have to do when you come home is be present with us as, husband and father, and contribute. But it wasn't like, the minute I walked in the door, she was out the door and I was suddenly, having to be, solo dad or something. It wasn't like that. It was optimal for me personally and for us that we were able to do that. And my point is this, that, and it's very much a mindset change, where I couldn't see more than 6 or 12 months out until she was born. My priorities completely shifted the minute she showed up as well. Like, it was not at all a burden to get home, to play with her, to read to her, to just be there. Not that I'm up in her grill. One of the things we did, was, by we, I mean my wife and I, we actively talked about what kind of parents we wanted to be, like how there's this term, and I don't know if you guys have it in Austria, but the concept of a helicopter parent who's always just sort of hovering over things, versus somebody who's a little more hands off. We were more on the hands off side. Like, let's give her the really, really good boundaries, but let's let her have as much agency within those boundaries as possible. We wanted her to get accustomed to making decisions for herself. And that worked out great for the kind of kid that she was and the kind of person she's become. It really worked out. But my point is, just to land this plane, is we talked about what kind of parents we wanted to be, and then back to the difference between being a single youngish man versus a married youngish man, and then suddenly a not quite so young dad. My priorities shifted in organic ways that wasn't at all a burden. And when I was in my early 20s and mid 20s, it seemed like that would be a burden. It seemed like being single was way better than not being single. Single is not really the point, but more about I can do whatever I want, more or less whenever I want. I don't have to accommodate other people's wants and needs. It seemed like a burden in my 20s to have to do that. But as I started to experience it, it was the opposite of a burden. It became a joy. And so yeah. So sorry to make it all about fatherhood and not about Bitcoin or business, but yeah, it's a huge part of my life and everybody's. And so maybe that'll be useful for some people, including you.
I love that. And I honestly, like, it's the reason why I didn't call the podcast the Bitcoin podcast, the Bitcoin Path, or anything else, because
Right.
I want to make the room for every conversation. And I think especially for Bitcoiners, it's super important to talk about those things. If we are honest, that Bitcoin is great. I know that Bitcoin is great. And probably 95% of the audience knows that Bitcoin is great. Why do people watch? There is the one thing that we want to make sure we still are right. That's just like, yeah, like, okay, like it's a confirming thing of like, am I really right? Is that Bitcoin thing really a good thing? Then there's, of course, like people that learn about Bitcoin, they just like down the rabbit hole. They are also there. But then there's also the people that really like Bitcoin, and they want to hear from other Bitcoiners what they think about A, Bitcoin, but also then B, other stuff. And so when I, for example, want to hear about things in the business world or things about parenting or things, but like I rather hear it from another Bitcoiner than from someone that doesn't get Bitcoin.
Totally.
And so I think actually, I mean, this is like completely off topic now, but I think actually the Bitcoin media side of things will slowly get out of this reporting about Bitcoin and talking about Bitcoin and get more about, let's talk about topics with Bitcoiners. And we already see that. Peter McCormick is a great example, right?
Totally.
There's like many of those examples that just like, we have Bitcoin as a foundation, and there are episodes that are just on Bitcoin, but we can talk about everything because Bitcoiners are interested in what other Bitcoiners say about other topics, if that makes any sense at all.
Oh, it does. I mean, I learned a phrase that makes me laugh even now, about the worst conversationalist you ever met is somebody who says, "Well, enough about me. What do you think about me?" There's a version of that that applies for Bitcoin, right? And Bitcoiners, right? Well, enough about Bitcoin. What do you think about Bitcoin? It's so tempting to just sit in that space, and I'm as guilty of that as anybody. But I do have other interests. Another version is AI. Enough about AI. What do you think about AI? This is where my daughter makes fun of me both about Bitcoin, because I always bring it up into some conversation I'm having with her, and then AI as well. Both because she's on the cusp. I mean, she's more than a year from graduating from college, but it's right there. And thinking about internships and work, and what's the post scholastic, post academic version of her life about to look like. I mean, I can't not at least have Bitcoin and AI in my mind, because it's the most important thing that's happening, whether on the financial side or on the business side, and in the world at large. And yet it's not everything, right? Where do you want to live is a component. And again, both Bitcoin and AI sort of impacted a little bit, but it's so easy to get, in those ruts. And so coming out of those ruts, I think, is important. And there's a danger in going into other ruts, right? Where, politics and current events, and I do think it's important to pay attention to those things, but it's not everything. Hobbies and pastimes and interests are important as well. So being well-rounded is important. And in these Bitcoin spaces, it's so easy to just ignore everything but Bitcoin, and how Bitcoin is profound, and if only everybody knew how profound it was. It reminds me a little bit, two other things, and I'll pass the mic back to you. I grew up in a relatively religious household, a sort of a, not fundamentalist in that sort of, in sort of the crazy version of it, but very much a Jesus is coming again, and we need to let everybody know so that they're ready when he shows up. That was very much part of the ethos that I don't share today, but if you get excited about a thing, you can't not tell people about it. The other one as an adult was getting into exercise. Once I started exercising, I was like, this is amazing. I feel great. And look at all of these benefits I've got. I need to tell you about it. Bitcoin is another version of that. And so I think it's important to keep a good sense of humor and laugh at ourselves about it, and make sure that we don't just talk about it. The entertainment business is another one. You get a bunch of entertainment people together, the only thing they talk about is entertainment, and maybe a little bit around the edges, but it all comes back to entertainment.
This just reminds me of something that I'm thinking about quite some time, and it has nothing to do with Bitcoin, but everything to do with Bitcoin. There is, what does it need for someone to succeed in life? Kind of a thing where you need pattern recognition. And I think most people that listen to this podcast probably have quite good pattern recognition, because they recognize Bitcoin as an important pattern. And I see people how they are sometimes obsessed and have very deep knowledge about something that just does not matter. Like, who are the 3 girlfriends of this one celebrity? How does this make your life in any way, shape, or form better? Or what value does that bring? But then they have no clue about actual big things that are going on in the world. Like, AI is huge. Bitcoin is huge. There's the globalization, the remote work thing, the freelancer thing, the going from big corporations to more and more freelance and remote workers and sole companies and smaller companies. All of those trends are hugely important and interesting to research about, and also can change your life drastically, financially, but also emotionally, and what your freedom looks in that. And I don't know why your short speech brought me to this thought, but seeing people that are so obsessed with one small topic that just doesn't really bring anything, like knowing all the girlfriends of I couldn't even name anything because I just don't follow this stuff. I would only embarrass myself now. But like having to know like what's going on there and this and that, I have no clue. Like literally, I only watch the news part where it goes around the politics, what's happening in Austria, because that's the only thing that really affects me. Everything else is like, yeah, I don't really care. I mean, I do pay a little bit attention with war stuff because I just want to make sure I'm not in the middle of it, like that I move in the right, like that I move before everything kind of bombs around me. The first thing that every Bitcoiner does, and the most important activity that every Bitcoiner keeps on doing, is buying Bitcoin. And I personally use Relay to buy and sometimes also spend or sell my Bitcoin. And there are two main reasons why I do so. The first one is it's Bitcoin only. They do not do any shit coins. They do not do any cryptos, any stocks or anything else. This is a tool, an app that is fully focused only and solely on Bitcoin. The second one is self-custody. They give you the keys to your Bitcoin the moment you buy them. You never give them the control over your Bitcoin, and you don't have to trust them because you can verify that you and only you have the keys to your Bitcoin. There's no third-party risk. There's no freezing of your assets. There's no rug pulling. There's nothing of that. Download Relay, the app, on your phone, or go to relay.app on your browser and use code Robin to save fees and get cheaper Bitcoin. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called micro-seed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With micro-seed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. You get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today, and you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io.